So I know this playlist has taken me a little time to get off the ground, but this is how everything goes for me. I'll get an idea, I'll start something, and then work will just like pile up, and I won't be able to do anything with it. But yeah, here we go. So we're going to start in with a really interesting question that I think a lot of people have on their minds when they consider freelancing, and that's why would you leave a studio job? And typically, the way that I answer questions like this is that I will go from personal experience and I'll tell you my story. But for various reasons, legal and personal, I don't think that's the best path to take here. So instead, what I'm going to do is pick a series of topics and cover them from both angles, whether it's positive or negative from a studio perspective or a freelancer perspective, and try to give you the context necessary to decide whether that would work for you or not. This is kind of going to be a longer video, I think, and I haven't even touched probably a third of the topics that I want to touch. So this will probably be a part one of a series. And so I'll label this part one as a result. So the most common reason people come up with for staying with a studio job instead of freelancing is job security. And my experience has kind of led me to believe that's more of a concept than it is a reality. For the past few years, every month we read about some studio being shut down, or there's some massive layoff at studio X, Y, or Z. And there's an outpouring of job offers from my friends on social media. They'll all be saying, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear about what happened. We're hiring and we're hiring," and it seems to be this this machine that just churns people around from studio to studio as projects get canceled and studios close and things like that. And that doesn't really feel like job security to me. Now, I was at Epic Games for almost 16 years, so I'm kind of the exception to that rule, which means there are pockets of job security out there, but I think they're pretty isolated. So I don't think that's really an argument for staying with a studio job. So one of the other large issues that comes up when discussing the differences between these two is income. And the argument for the studio job is that steady paycheck that comes in every X weeks. We all need to get paid, we all need to eat, so it's important. The problem, as I see it, is that studios generally don't want you to do anything else except work for them, which is understandable. They're paying you. But there's some studios that are not this way, but generally they discourage side work or taking contract jobs or anything else that would distract you from the job at hand. Even if they do allow you to do outside work, like marketplace packs or whatever else, do you really have the energy to do that? After putting in your 40 plus hours at your day job? It's possible, but man, that really gets tiring fast. So when it comes to income, I've learned over the past couple of years to think of it as a Hydra, a beast with many heads. And if you imagine that each head spits out money, right? Some heads are large, some are small, but they're all contributing to the same treasure pile, let's say. So as a studio artist, you typically have one large head on your Hydra. It's really more of a snake, which is the paycheck you're receiving. If something happens to that head, a layoff, a studio closing, that lets you go or whatever, that then your money flow stops. But as a freelancer, you can take on as many jobs and money-making activities as you're able to handle. So your Hydra has many heads, right? Some active, some passive, some large, some small, but the number of them is what's important. More heads means that if one of them goes away, say a contract finishes or your client decides that they don't need any more work right now, let's talk next month, that kind of thing, you as a freelancer can still eat and pay rent because the other heads are still producing money. So to me, that's a safer bet. Your opinion may vary. So admittedly, this section is more focused on American freelancers, since the rest of the world seems to have figured this out. But if you're an American and you want to freelance, you're going to have to consider health insurance. Having a studio job generally comes with health insurance, which is a big plus, especially if you have kids, or you or your spouse have an illness, or you need it for whatever reason. It's a huge benefit. Now, if you're like my wife and I, we don't have kids, we don't carry much debt, and we're both pretty healthy individuals. For us, it's not that bad. But for someone else, I can see how it may be an issue. It's certainly the largest cost that we have each month. But if you want to work in this country, it's just a reality you have to accept. So it may be a problem for you, it may not be, but it is something to consider. So when it comes to going freelance, you definitely have to consider your retirement options as well. Some employers offer very nice matching options when it comes to 401k, which is free money you can save towards retirement, and it's hard to argue against free money. Going freelance typically means you'll have to roll your 401k over into a personal plan and contribute to it using your own money entirely. And of course the limits on that are pretty strict. They're about half to a third of what you can put into an employer-sponsored plan. It's a personal choice as to whether that's going to be a problem for you. For me, it wasn't. The benefits of being a freelancer were outweighing the positives of that match from the employer. This is one of those things you'll find as you consider working for yourself. The system is kind of set up to encourage you to work for somebody else. The system doesn't want you to work on your own. There's this 401k issue. There's sorry, I'm losing the track now. There's a self-employment tax you'll have to deal with, and just all these little roadblocks that are set up to give you these little spurts of discouragement. But if you can push past them, then it may be the right choice for you. Now this is kind of a big one, and it's something that hadn't occurred to me until after I started freelancing, and that's the relationship change that happens. So follow me here. When you're an employee, you're working for a lead or a director or somebody who's typically they're above you on the corporate ladder. You're working to make that person happy, and keeping them happy means that you keep your job. If they get unhappy, then you might lose that job. So it's a pretty one-sided power dynamic. They have it and you don't. I mean, sure, you can always leave if you want to. That's what people always say. Oh, just leave if you're unhappy. But there's a multitude of reasons why people can't just walk from jobs. And it's not entirely a realistic option to say, just leave. Employers know this, and it can sometimes be used in less than healthy ways. Now, as a freelancer, that relationship changes. So it's more of a peer-based one. They're running a business, and I'm running a business. They need what I can provide, and I want to get paid. So we have mutually beneficial goals. And if they hate the work I'm doing, they can walk. And if I don't like working with them for whatever reason, or they breach contract or something, then I can walk. It's a very different world because I'm not trying to build up a career with this person, and I'm not trying to move up the corporate ladder. I'm here to do a job, get paid, and move on. Now, I might come back to this same studio if they like what I did and they want to give me more work in the future, but typically it's more of a mercenary thing. And you're not shooting for the long term, you're just shooting for the task at hand. But what it does do is it tends to even out the power dynamic. So you're peer-to-peer, not client-server, or however you want to visualize that. So, yeah, having the power to walk on both sides changes things quite a bit from the typical dynamic of a studio job. So here's one positive argument for being a freelancer. You won't ever crunch again. Seriously. The reality is you're being paid for your time as a freelancer, and generally you're being paid pretty well. So employers just aren't going to ask you to crunch. They're going to have their salaried employees do that. You're on the job for the hours that you agreed to, and no more. Your contract will typically stipulate no more than X hours per week, and that's it. There's nothing there to compel you to work extra free hours, so you shouldn't, and you won't. Ever. Now, it's not to say being a freelancer is easy or it comes with short work days or anything like that, but that's a topic for another video that we'll talk about in the future. But for now, rest assured that you're pretty much done with crunching if you freelance. Now that I got you all excited, let's throw a little cold water on that enthusiasm, shall we? Vacations are an issue when you're a freelancer. Sounds weird, right? It should be awesome. I want to go on vacation, so I just schedule it up and I go. I don't have to clear it with anybody or get approval. But vacations can be a double-edged sword, or triple-edged, or depending how it goes for you. But the problem is that not only are you paying for the vacation, you're also not making any money while you're on the vacation. So it's a double burn. Plus, if you've scheduled the vacation to start at the end of your current contract, when you get back, you're going to have to start hunting up work again. So you have a ramp-up time to consider as well. So vacations can really be a bit of a gut punch to a freelancer if they're not handled correctly. And we can get into that a little more deeper in the future. But for now, just know that it's not all glory. So to wrap up the first part of this little mini-series of why would you leave a studio job to freelance, I figured I would just take a minute to tell you or some of the reasons why I like freelancing. I read stories from friends and peers who haven't had the best time with it. I've seen some people try freelance and then go back to studio work, or they're still trying to make freelance work, but it's like it's a month-to-month struggle, and they're always right on the edge of like, oh, forget this, screw it. But I've had very positive experiences, and I think the path my career has taken has lent me certain advantages. Admittedly, I haven't had anyone try to weasel out of paying me or just stop returning my emails mid-project, or other things that I've heard from freelancers. They get thrown around as reasons not to do it. So, speaking of positives, I don't work when I'm not feeling creative, which is a huge change from being in an office where I'm required to be creative for X hours a day, and it's generally between this and this o'clock. That kind of scheduled creativity doesn't really work for me, and I didn't realize that until I started working on my own. It's one of those realizations you have one day. You're like, hey, I work a lot better like this. Nice. This will be a lot more fun. I like having the ability to take in an afternoon movie with my wife, or walk the dog, or run to the store, or whatever I want to do at whatever time I want to do it, because there's no one to ask permission from and no one to clear it with. I just go. And as long as I'm getting my work done on time, as per my contract, clients don't really care. Clients want the agreed upon work done on the agreed upon deadline. That's it. Now, obviously, you can't just go silent and stop communicating. That's part of professionalism, which we'll get into in a future video. But yeah, stay in contact with your client. But generally, they aren't going to micromanage you as to how you're spending your time, which I have found to be a huge benefit. So that's it for this entirely too long video. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.